Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends were the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk.
You should learn something from each and every single round you play in.
To fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore. Behind the Golf Brand Podcast is sponsored by On Point, the revolutionary three-dimensional domed golf ball marker. On Point provides alignment recognition as small as a degree of inaccuracy from the planned course of the putt face angle. Endorsed by Jim Furyk, U.S. Open champion and 17-time PGA Tour winner. On Point alignment technology has been proven to increase putting performance and help lower your score. Visit onpointgolf.us and be sure to use code GA10 for a 10% discount. On Point, make more putts.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to the Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. This is actually episode 53, which I just had to memorize today because I always forget. So welcome to the show today. I have a very special guest. His nickname is RJB that I just made up, but I have Robert Jones Black and Robert Jones Black, which it's just a long name. I guess I'll call it GB. If you see his middle name is, there's a Jones in it, right? So like the Jones, what is that? Where does that come from? So actually, he's the great grandson of Bobby Jones. He's an entrepreneur himself, and he is also working on a really fantastic program, charity called Generation Next Project, which is really cool. So we're talking about that. So I want to give him a show because I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is cool. So what am I call you today? What do you say, like RJB or Robert?
Yeah, I mean, you're going with the RJB. You might have
RJB is cool. You're gonna remember me. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You're gonna remember like, oh yeah, that guy Paul is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right,
it's
RJB.
Say Robert Jones Black. So yeah, go RJB.
Okay, so when in real life, do you go up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Robert Jones Black"? Did you say that?
I do. Well, I started doing it from the business standpoint when I started my company. I was like, all right, so it was very awkward at first, but we felt like it was important from a brand building standpoint.
I think it's cool.
It was a little bit differentiator, yeah. And there was actually a guy.
You're like, oh, I'm Bob Black. They're like, what's no.
Yeah, Bob Black, and that's in life. I mean, I've gotten Robert, Rob, Bob, Bobby, and then I played soccer at App State back when I was a young guy, and my team on the team for whatever reason, my name was Bert. So if you run across anybody, that played soccer with me at Appalachian State, they don't know me as Rob or Robert or RJB. They know me as Bert.
Bert Black.
Oh yeah, Bert.
Is that because? Wow. Okay, so let's play a little game. All right, this is the game we're going to play. It's called Time Machine. All right. So, what's the first memory you have of golf?
Ooh, good grief. I mean, I have to think like one of the first lessons that I got. For some reason, I remember being I remember the driving range. I remember almost literally the attempt of getting me to swing a golf club appropriately and how uncomfortable the grip felt. I don't know what the age of what that was, maybe 6 or 7. But I played as a kid off and on, especially summers and things like that. But then once I got to the point where you should really focus on the development of your golf game, I went soccer. And from the way that my game looks today, I wish I'd stuck with golf.
Really?
It's got its ups and downs, but I'll tell you a funny story on that. I guess I was maybe a month and a half ago. We were down in Florida. One of my clients does a production called the Celebrity Golf Classic. We're on like ESPN Plus, Golf Channel, Peacock.
Oh, I think I've heard of that. Is it like the one?
It's a little 1-hour show.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, so we were down in Miami and we had a great cast. We had Anthony Anderson from Blackish, Chris Spencer, who's just an incredible comedian, but more behind the scenes. They were taking on Lisa Leslie and Alonzo Mourning. So we had these, the NBA, WNBA going against the comedians. The comedians squashed them, by the way. But
did they really? Alonzo's $1 billion. Like, you could care less.
Well, I think it's the same thing again. When you're sitting there spending every waking moment of your day practicing basketball,
exactly.
You've got to kind of relearn golf as the comedians were able to, they get some time to go play and everything. But they were all fantastic. But Zoe, somebody told him that I was the great grandson of Bobby Jones, and he was like, "Oh man," he's like, "that is so cool." And he said, "What's your golf game like?" I said, "Well," I said, "I'll put it this way: your great grandkids are going to be awful at basketball." But I play a lot now. I play a lot more now than I ever have in my life. I love the game. I don't get mad at it. I have great shots and I have terrible shots, and that's just
game.
How I've learned to enjoy it.
Game. I never come across like people go, "You must be really good at golf because you have a golf website." And golf. No, man, I suck. There's only so many hours in the day, and I'm in the. Isn't all golfers on the quest to get better? Like that's all. That's why we play, right? It's not like, oh, I want to. Yeah, no, that's why you play, and that's why you buy more stuff, and you try to figure it out. Like that's and I think, yeah, I don't get that because my dad sucked and my grandfather sucked, so they don't expect. A lot of people don't.
That's the way it goes.
Yeah. So what do you? I guess so what's your day job? What? So you said what do you do for a living right now, or you're or what?
Yeah, consulting, I think is the best way to put it. We work on a couple different areas. So we really started focusing kind of the latter part of last year back into the golf industry. And so we're doing, some golf retreat stuff for corporations, a gift box program, doing the golf sponsorship for the Celebrity Golf Classic. So we've got a nice little piece of golf business going now. And kind of bringing it up prior to that, I created something called legacy branding that enabled me to launch the company. And that was essentially, I was the first of the third generation coming in behind the grandkids. So my dad's generation to start, I guess, putting my nose into family business and wanting to really help the Bobby Jones brand, which was just really awesome to work with the family and that generation on that. But what I saw was, I was like, there's a template here where I've created the definition and kind of the pieces or the variables of legacy branding, which at the end of the day is, something or someone that has a monumental or iconic story or piece to them, making sure that you have value in that intellectual property. That's done every day. Get that. The difference is that there's a real big focus on how that looks in terms of going down generation through generation. So we did a little bit of work with Richard Petty and the family, especially on their charity side. And then I actually spent a year and a half working with Evander Holyfield. So that was a fascinating, incredible human being. And I just think, unfortunately, as the pandemic did with so many businesses, Evander, as we were building out what this brand would look like long term, the appearances and the speaking engagements were such a huge part of his life leading up to the pandemic. So when all that was removed, we lost an athleisure deal when manufacturing was shut down. So Evander kind of turned back, and I think naturally back to what he was comfortable with, boxing. And so I think even, I know it was supposed to be Memorial Weekend, but they pushed it to July where he is going to box McBride. But boxing promotion, not my strong suit. So we, just kind of said, all right, we're going in different directions here. But so we do look at, future opportunities there where I do want to work with a couple more athletes and create that bridge where you're not just creating a short-term value to your intellectual property, but you're really focused on how that sustains for 100 years, which that allows me to kind of reflect back on Bobby Jones and how powerful he still is.
How did that back? I mean, this is your third generation, right? Yeah, third.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of Bobby Jones stuff out there.
Oh, without a doubt. I
mean, there's tons of it. We both know that, right? So then how does the intellectual property work on that? Because it's really interesting if you think about this, because your great grandfather was one of the first iconic athletes, right? Or if not one, probably if the, right? In a sport. And so it's almost how does that work going forward? That's really interesting. That's a really interesting question.
Well, because it is. And there's some really great pieces to that to assist the process. And one of those being the Masters every April. And the second of those now being for the past however many years it's been since they've moved the Tour Championship to East Lake. And hopefully it stays there undoubtedly. You almost have Bobby Jones bookending the PGA season. And we had that for a wonderful 1 year And then they moved the Players Championship, it's back to March before the Masters. But still, you look at it and you have the Masters opens up the major season, and then the Tour Championship closes the PGA season out. So you have the natural storytelling of Bobby Jones in both of those those golf courses with Augusta National and then East Lake being the home of Bobby Jones, and really a fantastic, almost museum feel when you go into that clubhouse and see everything that they have celebrating his life and career. But he was, the funny thing in terms of the brand creation, which the second generation, the G2s, did all on their own, was, when Bobby Jones finished golf, he did have a deal with Warner Brothers. He did a deal with Spalding. And this is all before there was really these endorsements and everything flying
nothing
around.
like that. There was endorsements until 1985 or whenever Jordan came along.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, no one was endorsing anybody.
It wasn't. And so there was this long period of his life. And then, about 20 years after his death.
When did he pass away?
71.
Oh my gosh.
1971. Just
how old was he?
Christmas.
He wasn't really old, right?
69. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So he was diagnosed at, I think around 46 years old with syringomyelia.
What is that?
It's a neurological disorder. It happens up right around your brainstem and neck area. There's a couple sister diseases around it. The other one's called Chiari. Chiari is a little bit more manageable, but syringomyelia is a really devastating disease, and I think it affects 3 million people in the U.S. alone. And one of the things we've always talked about syringomyelia, number one, is we get anybody to attempt to say it their first time trying.
I'm not trying it.
So that's the first piece. But one of the things, seriously, it takes over your nervous system. It really causes a lot of like a cyst or a searings is created in your brainstem, normally resulting from an injury. And there is potentially an issue or an accident that happened in Bobby Jones' life that we could say
what was it?
Was the cause.
Like he fell off a course or something?
No, fascinating. He was at East Lake playing. They were on, and they had the old setup, not how it's set up today, but they were on, I think, the 10th or 11th hole when a severe thunderstorm came up, and it started just pounding lightning down on them, and they're making the charge back to the clubhouse. And as they approached the clubhouse, a lightning bolt hit the chimney of East Lakes Country Club and just blew it to smithereens. And they get Bobby and everybody into the clubhouse, and everybody's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, we're fine. Everybody's okay." And they look, and Bobby Jones had blood going down the whole back, his back and around his neck, and a piece of the chimney had actually punctured his neck area. So very likely that could be what caused syringomyelia to take place. But it ends up the best comparison for syringomyelia is ALS. But sometimes in a slower process, and there's no cure. It's very hard to find. There's only one MRI, I think, maybe 2 MRIs that can even detect a searings in the neck area. So doctors often misdiagnose it, and patients go through years of headaches with their limbs, fingers, digits, and everything. And you end up starting to lose some functions. And that's with Bobby Jones, especially with no research on this disease when he was diagnosed. The last 30 years of his life were 25 years of his life.
1946. Yeah, right. Like they even knew what was going on back then. Right.
Yeah. Pain, wheelchair. I mean, just daily pain. You're never not in pain. He was, in the wheelchair for the last 10 years of his life. No more golf. It took
sad.
Golf away from him. It is. So, but he, I think, back to the brand side of it. And, I think the interesting piece was, I guess probably trying to do my math quickly here, 15 years after his death, before there was the first approach, and it was Ellie Callaway was the first one to come in and say, "Hey, I've got this signature of Bobby Jones, and I want to create a brand out of it." And
really,
he actually had the meetings in here. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. We've got a fair contingency of the Jones family here. And he went to see my grandmother twice on 2 occasions, trying to tell her, because she was the daughter of Bobby Jones, about what this could do for him and for his legacy. And she, I think, turned it down twice. And then the third time she was open to it. And since then, the second generation created a company called Jones Heirs. And Jones Heirs owns the intellectual property of Bobby Jones. And the 6-person board, all family members, cousins of, obviously of each other.
From the original family.
They make all decisions. Yeah, they do everything. So our apparel, we've got a whiskey brand out there now, the Clover, which has done fantastic.
That's cool.
We've got a Lynx, a golf course management company called Bobby Jones Lynx. They've done fantastic. We partnered with the Chiari Siringo Mailia Foundation, where that's now Bobby Jones CSL. So we've got some great pieces in that when you look at that legacy branding, things that have
so
that longevity.
Cool though. Like, what a smart generation, right? Because like essentially people steal everything nowadays, right? So they would have,
very protected. The Jones name is incredibly well protected, and they've always
because
done
of that generation that like gather those assets, essentially because those assets were low, and the name itself. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's like that's brilliant. So that was like, was that your? Like, is it your mom or your dad?
It's my dad. So my dad's mother was Bobby Jones' firstborn. So Claire, my grandmother. Yeah.
Grandmother.
My grandmother on my dad's side. Yeah.
How many kids did Bobby Jones have?
3.
And then how big is your family now?
It's surprisingly small.
Really?
Both my aunts, both my dad's sisters, neither one of them had kids. And
seriously?
So I have no cousins. I have no first cousins. My mom was an only child. And then
I'll be your family, RJB. I'll be your family.
Yeah, the RJB Paul fam.
RJB PAL. That's my middle initial. So
see, now that's starting to get long again.
No,
we just need to.
RJB is a good nickname. You know that. That's a good nickname.
We use it a lot around the office and everything, especially in emails where you don't want to type out Robert Jones Black. It's just RJB.
Yeah, we do that at my law firm. Like when we build, like everyone just goes by their initials, so we know who. I mean, we know who's who, right? Like you don't. Or like we do like a little note or a time entry, be like RJB Ray PAL blah blah blah. So smart. So your dad. So really, okay. So then your dad had his kids, right? So it was your dad. I mean, sorry, Bobby Jones had 3 kids, right? One and then only one had kids after that. The other 2 didn't.
There were 3. Yeah, so 3, and out of that, there were 7 grandkids of Bobby Jones. So 7 total. Wow. And then my aunt Mary Black, who I was very close to, she was Greensboro. She unfortunately passed away last February 1st, battling lung cancer. So now we have 6 in that generation, and
which is your dad's, right? Your dad's generation. Yeah. That's cool.
And then my generation, I think we're only at 12.
So then
it didn't grow that much.
Around what time did they like collect started like taking control of the name, I guess? Was it like in the 60s and 70s then? When it was, he already passed, right? So it's probably like
I don't think it was until we did this deal. I think it was, and
when was that?
Like 90, 91, I think. And so Austin and Bird, which was the law firm that was originally what Bobby Jones had started and partnered with once he, retired from competitive golf. That's now Austin and Bird today. So Austin and Bird.
Were they based out of?
And this is a really neat story. And I got to give the guy a shout out. But Marty Elgis was the original attorney on to structure the deal and to create Jones Heirs and to create this intellectual property protection and
holding company
corporation. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And he is still to this day, he is still our counsel. I mean, he's 30 years.
It's because that's how I am. So my clients, it's like family, seriously. Like
it is.
They take care of you. They're your, you're their guard, right? Like you're their counsel. Like,
yeah, I call them the fun police. And since, if with your law background and everything, it's always like you come up with these incredible ideas and you're so excited about it. And then you go, all right, I got to go.
It happens all the time, dude. It happens all the time.
Attorney goes,
and they're like, my IP attorney goes like that to me. She's like, no. He's like, don't do that. I'm like, but I already made, whatever it is. No, don't ever even put that out in the world. I'm like, and then,
but he's so fantastic.
But Yeah. And I respect them. So I'm just like, whatever you say, man. You know, like I have a couple IP attorneys I work with that I'm friends with. You know, we do a lot of, like, my best friend who works with me is an IP litigator. I mean, IP is crucial, right? Like you can't do it after the fact. You got to really grab that up and, you know, make sure you protect it before someone tries to
100%.
steal it. I mean, especially with your dad's name, right? Like, I mean, or, you know, what your family's name, because like I can see people doing that all day long, you know? So then is that counsel? So then the holding company then has counsel then to go after infringers, I would say, right? Like people selling pictures of your dad or your great grandfather, or sorry, I keep saying your dad, and like, or whatever. That's the shit that pisses me off, to be honest. Like, because you go to these websites like Redbubble or Etsy or whatever, and people like it's completely stolen. You know what I mean? Like that's completely 100%. Copyright. You know, like a photo, like the photos of your great grandfather behind you, right? Like somebody took those, right? Somebody would put that on a website, be like, "Oh yeah, Bob Jones." Well, technically, you don't have a license, right? I mean, photographers really get screwed over. I represent a pretty famous photographer, and like I love going after people that like that. Yeah. So then what? So that you're with your company, right? So then you help manage like larger. What's the word? Like setting up helping people set up their own legacy of what that, you know, family can do, right? Like, you know, the Vander Holyfield, right? Like, cause they don't know, because when the person is, it's one thing when you're the tip of the spear, right? What happens after that if you don't have the right planning and figuring out how to really, because you could see somebody selling like a Vander Holyfield gloves 30 years from now, right? Or whatever, you know, or a picture of Vander Holyfield, same thing. It'd be the same. There's only so many iconic athletes ever, right? That you just, so it's almost like, I don't know. So then you do a lot of marketing too with those. Do you help kind of structure those, or what do you do then?
Yeah, jumping in on the social media side of it. And, you know, so that's always a big piece of, you know, for that. But when we looked at legacy branding, it was essentially, there's kind of like 4 categories to it. So like the brand itself, when we talk about the brand, you have to talk about like what the retail or commercialized brand is versus also the personal brand. And so there's a really big balance there. And that commercialized brand, the success or the measurable there is how well can you bring their story into that commercialized brand, which again, I think prior to me being involved, I take no credit for, but I think the family has done such an incredible job of that with Bobby Jones. So, you know, with Evander, we went on this, I mean, the journey was incredible because what we started seeing, and he actually, Paul, I'll say this, the Generation X project, which we'll talk about, was all based on me learning about emotional intelligence. And I was educated on emotional intelligence, doing the work for Evander, where we really had him identified. This guy has an unbelievable perspective on how to deal with adversity and, you know, just challenges in life. And he did not mean to, I don't think, have such an incredible characteristic of it. But when he tells his stories, and his stories are fascinating, and how his mom impacted his life, he, you know, the one that we really, really liked was setback just paves the way for a comeback. And that's how Evander's always lived his life. So we were like, you know, you need to be this mentor person. You need to really, and he loves the kids. He loves working with kids. So he loved the idea. But every bit of messaging that comes out from a brand standpoint or from an Evander Holyfield standpoint needs to be about that mentor side. What you've done in your boxing career, everybody has noted that, right? 4-time heavyweight champion of the world, Olympian. I mean, just the Tyson fights, everybody can regurgitate these incredible accomplishments of Holyfield. But the value to Evander long-term was impacting and kind of educating kids on how to deal with adversity and all this. And so I started learning about emotional intelligence all through Evander. But that's, you know, I think just again, at the end of the day, so you have the brand side of it, the commercialization or the products themselves, the philanthropic, which is absolutely critical. To be that long-standing, valued intellectual property that can go generations, the best train of carrying you through time is the charity side. And then the final piece is just continuous content storytelling over and over and over. So those are the four things: the brand itself, creating products from the brand, charity, and content storytelling. Managing those four together is what creates legacy branding. And so you will come across athletes that may be doing one or two of those, but not doing all four, or not having someone sitting in a position to balance all four of those.
And explain it, right? Because they don't understand. I mean, they have plenty of money and they are whatever, they're very successful, but then they probably get to a point where like, what the hell do I do? Right? Like now what do I do? They can't. And so it's like, I mean, I never really thought about that, like the smart people, the athletes that are like, what am I doing? Or, what's the next step for my brand? Because, there's athletes that come and go all the time, right? They make a bunch of money and then you never hear back from them again. And it's like, there's tons and tons, but the ones that really have made a difference in the sport that are synonymous with that sport, right? Automatically. That's really cool. I mean, honestly,
it is.
I didn't even know. I bet you it was really cool for you too, right? Because when you met Evander and you said, like, when he starts talking to you and some of his little sayings that he says, so you're probably like, holy crap, this is like, sounds like the same stuff like what Bobby Jones used to say, like he gets it. Like, that's crazy, right? Without having to, and it was like, it wasn't forced. You know what I mean? It was like you read it in a book and was like, well, blah, blah, blah. It was like, this is how I live my life. Bah, 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 and then you look at when your grandfather's sayings, you're like, that's literally what my grandfather was saying, but differently.
When we talked with people when I was working with Evander, one of the most interesting, I think, and compelling pieces to it was you're not just fortunate enough to represent Bobby Jones and Evander Holyfield, but you're representing two of Atlanta's largest sports icons that they grew up. Now, originally, Evander was in Alabama before he moved over to Atlanta, but in terms of mileage, they grew up no more than, obviously different timeframes, but I think it was about 5 or 6 miles from each other. But the dynamics of Atlanta from that time period to Evander's child, his child years. And he was, he was saved and kept off the streets with the help of the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And then his mom just had this, she was not going to let him, go to the streets or anything. And you think about that, like just the societal differences. But when they both came out and into their sport, what I saw and what I really was just honored to really be a part of was exactly what you just said. They both had such an amazing understanding of how life and sport dance together. And Bobby Jones on how he tied in, golf and then, kind of accommodating that with life. I was on a call last week where we were kind of talking about slogans and things like that, where it was like, you could almost say to someone, do you play golf? Or they say, I don't play golf. And you say, the hell you don't. You play golf every single day. When you wake up in the morning, when you crawl out of bed, that's the first tee box. And you're going to find yourself in the rough. You're going to find yourself in bunkers, and it's all about how you manage the next shot. You have a short memory of what's gotten you to the place, what stroke you're on for that hole. But at the end of the day, we're all chasing, in Bobby Jones' terms, old man par. Old man par is life. That's it. And life does not mess up. Life is always making par. It doesn't make bogey, doesn't make birdie. It's just, and we have to try to manage that. You look at how Bobby Jones interprets that. Then I was switching over and I'm looking at how Evander Holyfield would handle forgiveness. And like we talked about the Mike Tyson ear. And when did you, Evander, when did you forgive Mike Tyson? And he was like, about the time I got out of the ring. We're like, just a permanent change to your head and your face, a fight that a lot of people, and I think Evander included, would like to forget or redo. And he just was like, he made a mistake. And I think he actually said in a quote that don't get me wrong, the first thing that I want to do is I wanted to bite Mike Tyson back. But it's emotional intelligence that you realize that that's a reaction. And that's a reaction that's not going to have a positive outcome on you and those around you. So it was a wonderful time period to have where I was looking at how Evander Holyfield perceived life and then reading about how Bobby Jones is perceiving life. But at the end of the day, when you break it all down, golden rule, and just understanding that your actions have consequences. And so we talk about Bobby Jones' temper a little bit in our storytelling about Generation Next Project. And he had an incident where he heard a spectator throwing his golf club. And he was, the USGA came down on him in a letter saying, do it one more time, you're out. And Bobby Jones, just from an emotional intelligence standpoint, shut it down. No more temper. And as a matter of fact, Paul, he took it as a kind of a competitive edge to really tell himself, the more I show my competitor my emotions, the more they're going to understand where I'm at my golf game.
Yeah, the weaker you look.
Yep. So he made that conscious decision between 1922 and 1923. So we call this the lean years, pre-1923, where he didn't win a major. And then 1923 to 1930, he ropes off 13. You can call coincidence on that, but you got to think that emotional management got his head into the place it needed to be a consistent multi-major a year champion for 7 years.
Which has never been done,
No, not to that level.
No, I mean, it's close.
We can argue about what
you won 3 majors in your career. Okay, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people have done that, but I mean,
13.
That's crazy. But see, it's like you said, well, it's like, I don't know if you watched that Tiger Woods documentary, which I thought was fascinating about like the way he's able to shut like everything out when he's playing golf. And I was like, that's crazy. Like the stress but it's like years and years of training, right? And being able to but on the flip side, when he was done with that, then, he didn't have the emotional intelligence, right? Because all of a sudden he started doing stuff that probably, we all know what he did. So the opposite of the emotional intelligence side, because he never developed those skills, right? Because he was so focused on, and the balance of that's crazy.
My favorite part of him, Paul, and that some people know, but not everyone knows. And it's an interesting story that once people hear it, they go, that's just amazing. But, he finished the golf career, launched the Augusta Invitational, later be called the Masters. And we get a little conflict in Europe. And then the age of conflict arises and U.S. has to go to war. And Bobby Jones is 41 years old when that happens and enlists in the Army. I mean, he's got 13 majors, the only golfer to win the Grand Slam, contract with Spalding, Warner Brothers, started Augusta National and the Augusta Invitational, and felt it to be his duty to enlist in the Army, and was actually D-Day +1, came in after they got Normandy taken down, and he was a prison interrogator, which I find this absolutely fascinating.
Are you serious?
Love to be a fly on the wall. Yeah, prison interrogator for the U.S. Army during World War II. I don't have it here, but I do have a letter that was given to me by my aunt who passed away that was written from Bobby Jones to my grandmother, Clara, for her 17th birthday. And he's in Germany and writing
so cool.
her. And it's this 4-page letter and just him, just the admiration and cuteness that he had this father-daughter relationship or whatever. And hopes that she would get everything that she wanted for, birthday, and I'll be home soon. But isn't that crazy though? If you think, to me, it's and there's a lot of these stories of Bobby Jones that are out there, but because of everything that he did with golf and because of the,
it overshadows it. Right?
Yeah. But I mean, who's going to go enlist in the Army
at that
for
age?
World War II, nonetheless? In your
he didn't even have to. He would never at that age. They weren't. Number one, you into the list. Number two, he would never have been drafted, right? Because they would. Oh, you need to be in the USO and you could do some trick shots or something stupid. But he's like, no, I'm I'm an American. I'm going to.
That's what they wanted him to do too, by the way.
Oh,
that's what they wanted him to do, and he said no. Yep, he said no. I want to go, and
that's what I love when you that generation or right a little bit older, think like Joe DiMaggio and all these guys. They all went in the military. That's what you did. Yep. Who cares what your sport is? Maybe they're not going to put you on the front line because they don't want to but that you made that decision to go do it. It wasn't like somebody forced your hand or you're going to hide behind a wall or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. I thought, honestly, I'm not trying to sound ignorant. I just thought okay, he probably just, did the Masters and he had all his money and I don't know what he did. I had no idea what he did, honestly. I mean, when he got out, what did he do? Did he just start working on
they had Augusta National was shut down. And they actually, another really cool decision made around the war was while Augusta National was shut down, they grazed cattle to create beef for the troops at Augusta National.
Did they really?
At Augusta National. Yeah. Yeah.
That's nuts.
We'll see if we can pull some pictures up. I know Getty Images has a picture of
That's
cows
crazy.
sitting out there. Yeah. So when the war ended and he came back, they had to basically reload Augusta National, get new funding in and everything to get it going. So it took quite a few years, I think.
So was he working on it the whole time then?
Absolutely, yeah. And then doing his law practice, yeah.
Wait, he was a lawyer?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. See, I'm sorry. That is freaking badass.
No, it's all right. Again,
my dad loves Bobby Jones.
Beautiful thing about it.
That's holy shit.
He was a lawyer, and so that's when he.
When did he go to law school? After the war?
No, he did it while he was playing golf. He passed the bar after I think
Shut
year
the hell
and a
up.
half of school.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Paul, you're dumb, Paul. You should have known that."
I think the urban legend is it was on like almost like a bet. Like he had a friend that said, "I bet you can't pass the bar right now." I don't know if that's true or not. I feel like I've heard.
He was brilliant.
He was smart.
Man. He's different. You know what I mean? Like people like that. Like they're just completely.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Your education degrees are Georgia Tech, Harvard, and Emory. You're on a different level.
And Emory's like private, right? I mean, that's expensive. I know that.
Yeah.
My friend went there.
So no,
So when he went to Georgia Tech, what did he like? What was his mind? What did he major in?
I think he was doing engineering there, and then I think he did one was English. I think the English degree came out of Harvard, and then Emory was law. But I don't think he had to finish Emory because he passed the bar, so he went straight into practice. So he was practicing law as he was.
They were so different back
winning
then
those
too.
majors.
Yeah, that's crazy. Dude, the bar is like the hardest test of all time. Like for reals.
Yeah.
That's the hardest. Like, trust me, it sucks. It sucks bad.
Well, I was like, I don't want to ask you or put you on the spot. Did you get it on the first time?
No.
Did you get it on the first time?
No, I failed by 3 points.
Did you really?
3 points. 3 points.
That had to be agonizing.
Oh, you big time, right? It's like kicking the nuts. Yeah. Like it was horrible. But you know what? Like your grandfather, you know what? It's even worse. I'll tell you, I know nobody even knows this. What's even worse is like, okay, so you take the bar now, right? And then you go to the judicial website for the state, whatever, and it says, okay, here's all the people that took there's a July bar and there's a February bar. Bars twice a year. And so here's all the people that passed. They say who passed, not who didn't pass, right? So you start scrolling through your name, right? And like, so your name, well, you're like, well, first of all, your head like explodes. And then you're like, are you gonna be kidding me? Right. And then all of a sudden, like, now social media, everyone's just blowing me up like, oh, I'm so sorry. Because I went to law school with and whatever, but I was like, nah. But like your great grandfather, right? Okay, this is the shitty part. More story. You take the bar in July. It takes them 3 months to grade it. Okay. So you don't find out until the end of October. Like life goes on, right? So at the end of October, you find out you didn't pass. Well, then the next was in February. And so it's like, well, and so what I said, I was like, all right, fine. And I like game of life. I just started studying again, right? Just it's a setback. And then the second time I took it in February, I crushed it because I learned from my mistakes, right? I spent too much time. So the bar is made up of 2 parts, right? It's written and it's multiple choice. And so like my written was crappy because I didn't do a good job. I'm a good writer. I just didn't do a good job. Like here's the thing about the bar too, all nerds out there. In law school, they like purposely put red herrings in like a fact pattern. And so like you go, oh, well, the guy, drove the car and that had nothing to do with like anything legal. So then it's a red herring. But in the bar, everything counts, right? Like every little fact has to be talked about. So it's like, anyway, so I passed. I did really well. I scored like 40 points higher. And that's it. Wow. I don't care. No one cares. Like, doesn't mean anything. Like,
well, you have to do it. I mean, it's the necessity of law, though. I mean, that's to be a lawyer. That's probably one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people quit. A lot of people
why I didn't go that route.
A lot of people just quit if they fail. I know people that are smarter than me, like top of my class or like high up, not number one, but like top, that failed the bar and never retook it, which blew my mind. Yeah, because they were like super smart. I was like, what the hell, But see, like I went to law school. I had a full-time job. I went to law school at night for 3 years and I had 2 babies during that time. That was a crazy time. So
I imagine that is.
So yeah, but like you said, it's the setback. It just makes you stronger. Like I can remember memorizing. You memorize like my stack of note cards are probably 3 feet long, right? Things I had to memorize. And like I remember walking, pulling my 2 little boys. One was like less than a year old. One was like 6 months old. No, 9 months old. Another one was like 3. In a little wagon behind me with headphones on, walking, memorizing. I remember that vision in my head. So
yeah,
that's crazy, dude. I did not know. Wow. So did he have any? Okay, here's a dumb question. I'm probably gonna get made fun of. So did he have ownership stake in Augusta then, or no? How'd that work?
I'm trying to think of the owners. I mean, he's co-founder, president emeritus. So I guess
it was more of a group. Yeah.
Yeah. It's club decisions, membership decisions and all that. But yeah, he, in terms of founding Augusta National.
I know. Yeah. Everybody knows that.
Co-design, being co-designer of it and all that. So
that's crazy. So then did he practice law until his medical conditions were like?
He did. Yeah.
That's horrible. I mean, as somebody who's that mental, you know what I mean? Like, and then having a disease like that is probably horrific. And he died so young. 69's young, man. Seriously, that's really young.
It is. And then just how much you're aged when you're going through a terminal illness like that too. That 69 quickly starts looking
like 89,
80.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's, like talking, that's the neat thing. And my dad's always been very, very humble and almost kind of quiet about this. And I think that was one of the neat things about growing up, where I understood the connection, and maybe I understood to a degree the significance of Bobby Jones. But my dad was always very humble in that. So when you get stories from my dad, or you ask him a question about, what was it like, he'll give you, just a nice, modest answer. But that's one thing that he and my aunt and the other cousins all will say. You never once heard Bobby Jones mention anything about pain, discomfort, anything like that. So most of their life. So my dad, I think, was like 22 or 23 when Bobby Jones died.
So his grandfather, right?
15, yeah.
And so I don't know about 15. You, but I was always I was super close to my grandfather. Like I love my grandfather. I feel like with kids, especially boys, I feel like boys are always more connected to their grandfathers than they are their father. Like my kids are super connected to my kids, or my kids are connected to my father, which is crazy. My dad's nuts. So I'm like the guy you guys like so much was not that cool when he was younger. I'm going to tell you that for sure.
Yeah. But well, sometimes
he's chilled. He's like, this is like the chill version of what I had to do.
Yeah. Well, they got it easy now. The grandparent job, you can kind of pop in, pop out.
You leave. They get to do all the fun stuff. You have to do all the BS.
Yeah.
So, all right. So then what made you start thinking about Generation Next? Tell me about that.
Okay. Yeah. And so the pandemic 100%, got this to happen. And, go back to Evander real quick. We launched Evander's Foundation February 22nd of last year. And it was on the eve of the Tyson Fury Wilder fight. And we did it on ESPN, Maximum Boxing, right before the weigh-in. It was phenomenal. It was awesome. Just a nice announcement that Evander made. And, and I still say to this day, that was the last major sporting event before the shutdown. If you want to constitute, which I think that fight, Tyson Fury Wilder fight, was maybe one of the more exciting fights in the past 10 or 15 years. And then we were all hearing about this troublesome spread of the virus and what would it do to sports. And I think it was March 13th is the iconic date where everything just went done. ACC tournament canceled, all the basketball conference.
Yeah, I was looking at stocks last night, and I was looking at actually Shopify stock last night, and it's worth $1,600 right now, right? But I was like, I'm gonna look at the last year, and right around the same date, it was March 13th, March something. Literally, it was price per share was $400. I was like, that's just I remember that day. I remember that time frame, and I just it was the stock weird. Market. It was it was
it was affecting everything. I mean, we were sitting there going, what does this all look like? And then when they shut the schools down and everything, and we kind of from our standpoint, once we lost, and it was this 1 week late March. I think it was after March 13th, where in 1 week we fielded, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 calls of cancellations for Evander appearances and everything. And I knew that was hurting him. And so we just kind of said, look, let's focus on the foundation. And we've got a really good message here where we need to focus on the kids' impact of this pandemic and of the shutdown. And so I started bringing in the, emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning contacts and network that we had. And we created a little miniature campaign called Unite for Our Fight. And so we did that. And as that was happening, and sorry, I'm going to just get into a little bit of a tragic situation, but it's the whole key to why I decided to do this. But on April 17th, we're over a month into this, and no real end in sight in terms of, is there going to be a stop and spread? Can we open schools back up? Can we go see friends or whatever? My business partner, who was one of my initial investors and now just an absolute dear friend, they had just kind of a normal day at the house in terms of shutdown. They had to fix their well. They live out in Texas, and so they're on well water, and they did that. Everything was fine. And he has a 12-year-old son named Hayden, and Hayden went up to go play video games while Brad went into the home office to do his work. And his 9-year-old daughter came down and said, Hayden's hurt himself. And so Brad drops everything and runs upstairs. And unfortunately, Hayden had hung himself. And they did 911. They had neighbors, the whole thing, but they couldn't save him. And the saddest piece to that was it was 4 days shy of his 13th birthday. And so Brad and I started talking kind of through the days and weeks and everything. And I could tell he's a West Point grad. He's one of these people that he sold his first company to IBM. He's building a monster second company. He's just a driven guy. And he took ownership of what had happened, some responsibility, and his hashtag is conversations matter, because he didn't feel like he needed to talk to his 12-year-old son about suicide. And I don't think a lot of people really felt like they had to. But when it's too late, you have to live with that the rest of your life. Brad decided he wanted that to have an energy to it to try to keep this from happening to other families. And so I'll go real quick here on this. But he ended up a couple of days after they had a burial for his son, and obviously limited because nobody could go, and they just had some of his friends show up and all that. He went on to Facebook Live and he recorded for like 22 minutes. He unleashed it, and nothing bad, nothing attacking. He just talked about that the decision making and the policy making, which he felt like undoubtedly changed his son's state of mind. His son did not have a history of mental health, but they took away athletics, they took away school, they took away social life. And when I say they took it away, we had to, and we understand that. But Brad felt like that there was this, maybe I think he called it irrational empathy, where if you're trying to save one group, but in doing so, you are sacrificing or hurting another group, that's not a good policy. And this video went viral. And to this day, there's an edited down version that's about 12 or 13 minutes. That video has been seen over 150 million times. Brad's been on NBC Nightly News. He's been on Fox News with Tucker Carlson. Daily Mail covered him. People magazine did a feature on him like a month ago. The story hit really hard because Brad, and we did not understand this, we kind of suspected it. But prior to April 17th, when we were having these discussions on Evander's Unite for Our Fight with the experts in the child psychology industry and social and emotional learning companies, they were all saying, there is going to be a tsunami of mental health issues that is coming. You cannot isolate kids, especially in this very vulnerable, like 8 to 16, where development is so key. And we kind of look back in that now and say, geez, we were ground zero. I mean, this was the first known case where the parent came out and said, my son would be alive if it were not for COVID. So as I'm trying to process this and process getting through the pandemic in general, and I have a 6-year-old son, or he turned 6 last August. He's going to be 7 here and just right around the corner. I was like, this is a big thing and nobody's talking about it, or they're not talking about it right. It's not a captive conversation. It's kind of becoming an attacking conversation. And the entrepreneurial side of me was like, what can you do? What can you take? Already that Brad, my business partner, and Hayden's dad had already started. How can we take this to a new level? And that's when I had just kind of a moment in, I think it was October, where I started rereading quotes of Bobby Jones, rereading Down the Fairway. And I was like, this guy 100 years ago wrote things that are so absolutely relevant to today. And I can take that as kind of my starting point and embrace what my lineage gave to me and say, I want to accept and really take in what Bobby Jones did, but I've got to make it my own after that. Otherwise, you're kind of just riding coattails. I was like, but this is my motivation and I'm going after golf. And I think this is a really interesting part of this, because I think a lot of people feel like that I need to generate an output that has golf related to it. And I'm pushing back on that a little bit, and maybe dangerously so, because my point is, no, you really, it doesn't have to be that golf is the actual fixer of this issue or the subject around it. What we have to understand is a couple things. One, golf is so family oriented. I said on a call 2 weeks ago, and this is a stretch, but you're going to go with me on this because you're PL and I'm RJB. You could literally have in this sport 4 generations playing the same sport. You could have a 6-year-old kid.
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%.
28-year-old. Yeah. And I was like, that's one piece. The second is the private country club side of golf is magnificent within the industry, but that's also a lifestyle. And there's people in there that, number one, private country club can hold a business leader, community leaders, community influencers, funding, so many things that sit in there. But at the end of the day, take all that off. The way I looked at it was a private country club also, I would imagine, this is a guess. I want to try to see if we can get an actual stat on this. I don't know how long that would take. My guess is north of 60% of members have a kid between the age of 5 and 20 years old. So to me, I was like, this is a great way to get into the family discussion. And I've got this great industry that has this close-knit family ability that other sports just do not have. You don't go to a building with 300 other families to go play basketball. Sorry. But golf provides that. Golf gives you that. And I was like, if I can give the story and the compelling nature of how golf and life really emulate each other, show how Bobby Jones illustrated that, just so that we can all say, okay, there is a problem. And this isn't just pandemic. This is technology and how much things have changed from when you and I were raised to how we are raising our kids now. That we have a lot of things and variables we did not have to have disciplined when we were growing up that now have to be disciplined. So we're just here to say there is a problem. We're not the answer, but we're going to search for the answer. Let's search for it together. But I need the ears and I need people that can make a change, get involved and make a difference. And I felt like golf possessed that. Does that make sense?
Exactly. No, it's cool. Well, thank you for being on the show. I think it's really cool, everything you're doing. And I hope you start listening to the show now. You know who we are. Just kidding.
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
No one else calls you RJB like me. So
yeah,
remember that. Remember who gave you that nickname on the air. And I'll see all you guys in the next episode. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're going to beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.